Hello, it's Gaten Klein here, and welcome to this video on Asperger syndrome and family lines. In this video today, I will expand on the understanding from the previous video on the wall of glass, knowing that the wall of glass is what drives most symptoms of Asperger syndrome, which is a subcategory of autism, and we will see something very important today about how we happen to have this wall of glass, where it's coming from, and why our work is so efficient. So one of the most important understanding that you can have if you're watching this video, whether you feel that you have the wall of glass yourself or that you're watching it from somebody in your family, is that you can have subclinical symptoms. So subclinical symptoms are symptoms of having this wall of glass, and therefore you have the consequences of it that I explained in the previous video, which are typical symptoms of Asperger, but you can have those symptoms as not being so strong and not being clear enough that you actually become diagnosed of having Asperger. So basically you don't have it full on, right? As we've seen before, we can describe Asperger's as a spectrum disorder in its own right. So it's not like you have it or you don't have it, you can have it in various degrees. And you can have it full on at 100%, you can have it halfway at 50% or less than that. So I personally was probably around 20%. It was not so strong and it was not something I could not overcome, but it created a lot of issues, a lot of struggles, misunderstanding, feeling different, feeling disconnected from people, feeling like I would never really be satisfied in relationships and intimacy, and all these struggles. But it wasn't as strong as I could be completely described as Asperger. And actually I was never really diagnosed because professionals could not really detect this Asperger syndrome in me. However, when I read the list of all the typical symptoms and behavior, I was like, yes, this is me, this is what I've been experiencing. And when this wall of glass was described, I immediately recognized, yes, there is this barrier, it's invisible, it's preventing me from connecting with people. Basically, I don't feel what's after this barrier. And that was me. But I was not at the high end of the spectrum. So you can have what we call subclinical symptoms. Subclinical means they are not strong enough to be clinically detected. So you cannot be diagnosed if you're in this situation, but you still experience the struggles, you still feel different, something is not right, and you lack this feeling of emotional connection to others mostly. In any case, you can sense this barrier, this invisible barrier between you and people, this wall of glass. So, now that we've established that you can have subclinical symptoms, let's look at the family. As we said in previous videos, the wall of glass appears very early in pre-birth biological development. There is a moment in time during the development of the sperm or the egg where there is a developmental event. If this goes wrong, you end up with having the wall of glass from birth, because it's there from before birth, so to speak. If this event is not going wrong, if it's going right, you don't have the wall of glass. So why does it happen, and what happens? And we've talked about epigenetic damages before, right? So the correct biological development is disrupted by those epigenetic damages. And we've seen that epigenetic damages are the same thing than generational traumas. And that's one of the most important discoveries in biology in the recent years, is to understand the role of trauma and stress on the very intimate part of our cells, which are the genes and what's around the genes. If you want more details on this, you can watch the video on epigenetics, but I assume you might already have seen it or you can watch it afterward. However, what's important is to understand that wall of glass, which is the root of most of Asperger's symptoms, is inherited, right? It's something that we inherit from our parents, our grandparents, and our ancestors eventually. But you might realize that your parents might not have this problem. So what's going on? Let's take a look at it. Let's imagine this situation where one parent has a wall of glass. So the genes that this parent will transmit to the child will carry this epigenetic problem, and so the child will have it. But the child only has 50% of the genes from his father, right? And what happens is there is a distribution of some of the biological responsibilities of our genes in our body. Some things happens on the left side and some things happens on the right side of our body, and there is a difference. And we've seen that there's a lot of genes that correspond to this and correspond to the fact that some things that come from our father are happening on the right side of our body, and some of the genes that come from a mother have an impact on what's going on the left side of our body. This is not the case for all genes. Obviously, if you think about eye color, it's the same. It's the same on both sides, right? So many things are for the full body, but some things are separated between left and right. Okay? So imagine that the father has the wall of glass, but the mother does not. In that case, the child will have the wall of glass on half of their body, right? And if the other parent do not have any wall of glass, the child will not experience Asperger's syndrome. Why is that so? Because if you have this wall of glass on part of your body, of course, it's a problem because you cannot connect to other people, but the other side is free. And that, as it's free, you can connect with other people. And so you don't really experience this feeling of being disconnected and separated and different and all the other consequences of that. So you don't experience Asperger's syndrome, right? Because you have the ability to connect to other people. Now, imagine that both parents have it only on half of their bodies. So as I just explained, if you have it just on one side of your body, you don't experience the symptoms because you still have this connection on the other half, and so you can compensate for it. So in that case, the parents will not feel that they have a problem because they don't really have the problem. If they have it just on half of their body, it's not creating symptoms, so it's not a problem. However, they have this experience and they transmit it to the child. So what will happen in that case is the parents might experience the feeling of space being disrupted, and they might experience some left and right differences and have some struggles with team sports or some activities that require a good feeling of space, but that's all. So that's not Asperger's syndrome. However, the child can inherit from these wall of glass pieces and have a full-on wall of glass. In that case, the child will have Asperger's syndrome. Okay, so that means that if you're a parent or if you're a child and you're thinking about your parents, there is a link between the two. If you're a parent and your child has Asperger's syndrome but you don't, maybe actually you have something. But maybe it's just on one side of your body and not the other, and you might feel these differences. You might feel that on one side the space is open, and the other side there is a feeling that space is actually a little bit restricted or something strange is going on. And that explains what happens to your child and why you don't have it. However, we also talked about subclinical symptoms. So let's imagine another situation. Let's say that one parent has it completely and the other have subclinical symptoms on half of their body. Okay, so the father has 100% the wall of glass, is diagnosed as having Asperger's syndrome, but the mother don't. She doesn't, sorry. So not only she has it on only half of her body, but she has it at a very low level. In that case, she doesn't really feel anything. She doesn't sense that there is strong disruption of space or left-right difference. it's pretty smooth. However, she still has the problem and it carries on to the child through the genes. So the child will have a left-right difference, of course, but the child will have the wall of glass experience everywhere. Even if it's less intense on one side, it's still present, and so it blocks the ability to emotionally connect with other people. So the child will have a diagnosed symptom. It might not be as strong as the father in that case, but it will still be strong enough that it can be diagnosed as Asperger syndrome. And the child cannot compensate for the lack of connection. Now, let's say that both parents have subclinical symptoms. So let's say that both parents have the wall of glass, but it's really light. It's maybe 20%. In that case, they will not be diagnosed as having Asperger's. They will seem normal to other people mostly. Maybe a little bit not very social or not very expressive emotionally, something like that. And they will feel themselves that they are quite normal, even if relationships are not so easy and there is something unsatisfying and I don't feel very, very connected with people. I still struggle with this, but I don't have anything like autism. No. However, if both parents have the experience, it will be carried down to the child, and the child can inherit from this, and can have symptoms that can be as strong or a little bit stronger than his parents. Okay, so probably the child will have 20% or more of this problem. Hence, the child will have struggles. He will not have the full-on experience, but he will experience symptoms in ways that are disruptive. It depends. But you can see that as a parent, you can feel that you've been normal and you don't have any issue. However, when you were reading the description about Asperger syndrome, you started thinking, oh, it sounds a little bit like me. Well, that explains it. You might have subclinical symptoms and you were able to overcompensate and navigate through life despite having this. But if your child has a worse Asperger syndrome, that's because of this. Okay, so as a conclusion, Asperger syndrome and the wall of glass experience are a generational inherited issue. Parents might have one-sided syndrome or subclinical symptoms and be undiagnosed and not suffer so much from it, but the child can have more severe symptoms. And the treatment involves healing generational traumas, which also are the same thing as epigenetic damages, as explained in the video on epigenetics. So if the child is not treatable, if the child, for example, is too young or is too cannot focus or have any other issue, and we cannot run the treatment with them, we generally advise to do the treatment on the parents. Even if you, as a parent, do not experience big issue, and you say, okay, this is maybe there, I recognize it, but it's not so bad, I can deal with it, I've been dealing with it my whole life. Of course, sure. However, you would still benefit from removing this wall of glass. You will still experience an improvement in your own quality of life. And if both parents do it, there is an effect that carries on to the child, and the child can experience a change. So that can be liberating, and that's what we advise. We actually advise that if you're watching this video and you think that other people from your family might have some of this issue, you can send them the videos and we can have this conversation together, because probably this runs in the family at different degrees. Now, again, this can only happen sometimes as just one generation, and the previous generations don't feel anything because of the reasons I've explained. But the genes and the epigenetic damages are still running through the family lines. That's why we call this video Family Lines. So if you want to learn more about epigenetics and generational traumas, please check out the other video. And Now you understand that the wall of glass will be carried on to your offspring. So if that's an added motivation, that's great, because not only if you do the treatment you will benefit for yourself, but the next generations will also benefit from this. You can stop it being carried on by doing the treatment on yourself. And it's very lovely because sometimes we have whole families that come to us and we're able to help them, and everybody feels improvement. And that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful change. So again, if you have any questions or any comments on this, please feel free to send them over to us and we will answer them. And if you're interested in doing the treatment for yourself or your children, let's have a conversation about it. You can click on the link below this video, and we'll have this conversation. Thank you. Have a very nice day.